massive chat today with Central California diver Eric Anderson. Been a mad keen follower of his on Instagram and have engaged with him many times over the years. It's really cool to chat with Eric. Anyway, if you are brand new to the Noob Spirit podcast, welcome along. I am the host, Isaac, aka Shrek, and you are in the home of interviews with spearfishing experts and authorities from around the world. Today, it's Central California. We're talking diving and species in Central California, sketchy shore dives, dirty visibility, diving with great whites, chasing lobster, cabezon, all of some of those iconic species they get over there in those huge kelp forests. And talking about kelp forests, we also get into Urchin Barrens. And we get into some of the science and some of the sort of the causes and the effects of these Urchin Barrens, which have destroyed some of California's kelp beds. And it's a really interesting discussion. And I had some really interesting reading and research I did before we got into this chat. So really enjoyed chatting with Eric. We'll get there in just two shakes of a lamb's tail, as we say in my home country. Also hang around to the back end of this interview because I've got a voice message from Andrew McVeigh, who tells us a story about the dumbest way to lose a spear gun. Andrew left me a voice message over in the Noob Stories section at noobspirit.com. There is a facility up there in the menu to leave a voice message for up to 3 minutes, and I would love to include it in the next episode of the Noob Spirit podcast. And if you want to do equipment reviews, scary moments you've had in the ocean, lessons learned, anything you like, leave me a voice message. I'll include it try and include it in another upcoming episode. We've got another one in the next episode from Brett Whitman. So noobspirit.com and leave us a Noob story. Also, a couple of reviews for the podcast. Great show. Thank you guys. Really enjoying this show from Idle Juho. Here in Australia. Also, great listen, relevant to UK Spearos. Loving it, guys. I was recommended this by my dive buddy over here in Devon, and I'm hooked. Keeping lockdown bearable and lots learned to improve my hunting this season. And that's from UK Noob in Great Britain. Thanks for that, buddy. Let's hook into this episode. Another quick shout out for Old Man Blue Dive on Instagram. Follow him along. This guy is making some phenomenal equipment. I'm just looking at his website now in the packages section. He sent me a bit of a care package, which is why I'm doing him a mad shout out, but sent me a couple of shirts, a cray badge, a stringer. This is he's got a terrible business model. This is some of the heaviest gauge equipment I've seen to date. He's not going to get a lot of repeat business because I think you're going to buy it once and it'll last forever. So shout out to Old Man Blue Dive. Check him out on Instagram. Anyway, let's get into this episode with Eric Anderson. Boom. This episode of the Noob Spirit podcast is brought to you by spearfishing.com.au. They've been on board for more than 100 episodes, and I'd love for you to shop at spearfishing.com.au. They have a price beat guarantee, hassle-free returns, flat shipping rates across Australia, and you can save $20. For every purchase over $200, if you use the code NoobSpirit, you save $20. Thanks for supporting the Noob Spirit podcast and shopping with spearfishing.com.au. Partners of the Noob Spirit podcast, Neptonics.com. Neptonics offers the best spearfishing gear, spear guns, carbon fins, spear gun parts and packages at the lowest prices. Go to Neptonics.com, use the code NOOB10 to save 10% off anything at Neptonics.com. NOOB10. Boom! All right, it's been a long time coming. Welcome to the Noob Spirit podcast. I've got Eric Anderson here. He's a Central California diving veteran. We've had a sort of a bromance over the year, Eric. I've really wanted to get you on the show for a long, long time. You've been on the other awesome spearfishing podcast. You've been on This Ocean Life, and you've been on Spear Factor with Brett. So I'm going to refer people to go back and listen to those episodes for even more of your story. But welcome to the show, man. It's awesome to have you.
Hey, Isaac, also known as Shrek. Appreciate it. Looking forward to it. Been a long time, as you said. So
yeah.
Let's get after it.
I think you fondly remembered my first few episodes, which are actually Roman Castro's The Spear podcast episodes.
That's right. Yeah, those early episodes with Rob Allen. And then, as you so kindly corrected me, that was the other podcast.
It's all good, man. I could have just nodded and carried on like I didn't know and pretended, but man, it's awesome to have another typical Spearo dad too. So, as I understand it, you've got no time. You're incredibly tight at expending money on equipment, and you've also tell terrible jokes. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's pretty much the basis of what I'm about. Really bad dad jokes. No time. Kids suck it up. But some recent events has opened up a couple windows on some weekends. So
nice.
It's promising.
That's good, man. I had a sneaky message with Aiden. So Aiden Brown, one of Eric's good buddies, prompted me to ask you about your secret burley recipe for big fish. I thought we'd start the show there.
The burley. So what you got to do is you got to have a late night of some snacks, really beef up the night before diving. No, it's a great story. At the end of this last year, we were down in the Channel Islands, so Santa Cruz Island. We're looking for lobster, some big calicos. In the winter, you can get some really good visibility. And Aiden went into shore and, starts peeling off the suit to do his business. And he's hollering at me, screaming. I'm sitting in the boat and he's screaming. He's like, "There's the biggest sheephead over here, the biggest sheephead." I'm like, "Well, shoot it." He's like, "But it's coming after my shit, so I don't want to go after it." Well, that's the trade-off you're gonna have to make, man. If you want that big sheephead, you're gonna have to go into your own shit.
How do you eat a fish after it's been chewing on your poo?
And people eat tilapia, so there you go.
That's a good point. And mullet's probably not much better. And isn't it funny though that some of those fish, like, they smoke up and they taste good?
Yeah. That shit will really turn brown quick.
So did you ask Aiden? Did you guys eat that shithead? I mean, sheephead?
No, he ended up not going after it. It cruised off while he was getting his suit on, but. No, there's great diving around the Channel Islands, so it's an excellent spot right off the coast of Santa Barbara, about 5 hours south of where we are in Santa Cruz, California.
Because it's my understanding, and I think from listening to some other episodes, the sheephead don't or seldom come up as far north as you are. Is that right?
Yeah, they make it to about Monterey, Carmel area. That's about an hour south of us in Monterey Bay. But they might be up in Santa Cruz, but they'd have to be about 3 feet from my face to be able to see them because the visibility is so bad.
They're cool looking fish, but they don't look particularly smart. And they're wrasse. They look like they're pretty long-lived and slow-growing. What else? They chew up all right, or what's the story with them?
They're pretty thick meat. They're really good eating. I think there's a couple guys here in Central California, a guy, Matt Bond, who goes by Cut Professor on Instagram, but he's told me you can make really good sashimi with them. I haven't shot a lot, so I haven't eaten them very much. They start out female, and at about 5 to 7 years, they transition over to male. And then, there'll be a few dominant fish on the reef. And if they get picked out, then others start transitioning over. So they eat a lot of urchin, which California has some urchin issues, but it's really hit hard more in Northern California where they're not at. So.
You and me have dug up a fair bit of research and articles and stuff to chat about with the urchin. I want to dig into that a little bit later. Is geeking out on sort of like the marine environment and fish species and stuff, is that something that you've enjoyed as part of your spearfishing journey?
Oh, yeah, I've always been a nature freak. They called me Nature Boy when I was a kid. I used to memorize birds and fish and all sorts of stuff. And, after the Marine Corps, when I started getting into diving, I didn't start diving until 2013. It started with scuba. And then saw a sea lion, got hooked, got into spearfishing after a while, realizing, an hour down and with a spear gun is not the most sporty thing. So got into free diving through Abalone and haven't turned back. Unfortunately, Abalone closed down, but maybe one day it'll open again.
Abalone, particularly in that Northern California, Central California area, it seemed like it was the gateway drug to spearfishing for a lot of people. Sounds like a lot of people used to chase them when it was open, and that kind of opened people's eyes to the possibilities of spearfishing. Is that sort of what you've seen? Yeah,
I'd say Abalone diving was more of it was more of a community sport than spearfishing. You went out, you picked your abalone, you got your limit, everyone came back to camp, you had a huge cookout that night. But for me and for quite a few others in California, it was more of an addicting hunt for red treasure, the big 10-inch abalone. I would drive ridiculous distances, 7-8 hours in a day. Get there 2 a.m, wake up at 5, dive all day, drive home that night, just to try to find a 10-inch ab and turn around and do it again the next couple of weeks. So,
did you ever get a big one?
Yeah, I ended up with 11 10s before they closed the season. I started diving in 2015. So in 3 years, I was able to get 11 10s. But my father-in-law, I'm actually in his house right now, Phil McReynolds, him and his buddies since the late 60s have been going after trophy abs. And one of his good buddies, Dwayne DiNucci, actually has the most in the world. He's got over 400 10-inch abalone.
Holy moly.
He has 34 11s. So they dedicated their lives to it. Their wives hate them for it. No, I'm kidding.
10 inches, sometimes I get stuck with the American sizes. It's like 24, 25 centimeters or something, isn't it? I think
so. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm asking you questions that you're unfamiliar with. I forget you guys are backwards over there.
If you've watched the news over the last 2 years, we're more than backwards.
Nah, it's all forwards from here. We won't get into that. All good. So, look, we were talking about the urchin. It's the purple urchin. They're invasive over there, and they've taken a toll on lots of things. I mean, we're going to get into Urchin Barrens and stuff, but it's the red lip abalone that you're talking about, isn't it? Are they the real big ones?
The red abalone. There's multiple species in California: pinto, pink, flat, green, black, but they're all much smaller species. Abalone are all over the world, and the majority of them are very small. The largest are the red abalone. The only reason they got so big is because Russian fur traders in the late 1800s wiped out the otter population all along, Washington, Oregon, and Northern California coast. That was the dominant predator of abalone. They shouldn't grow that large. Normally, they wouldn't be able to make it to that size. But now I would say even in Santa Cruz, I see really big abalone, and there's a healthy otter population. So it's all about the balance of different species and everything. But I mean, they got huge. The world record, I think, is 12 5/8. Don't quote me, but I mean, that's ridiculous. Huge. It's a huge snail.
Yeah, for sure. And that's what it is. It's a snail, yeah. The other thing it's wiped out is the red urchin as well, which is another species of urchin that the purples must compete with in some way. But Urchin Barrens, let's get into it. So, I mean, my understanding is kind of an Urchin Barren, or what do they call them? There's another word they're using.
Yeah, Urchin Barrens is what we say here a lot. I mean, now I'm not a scientist, but I am interested in the topic, of course. And I think it's a whole multitude of factors. It could be, water temperature, ocean acidification, et cetera, et cetera. But what I see is areas that 5 years ago, 6 years ago, were full of macrocystis, the large giant kelp that we have in California. I mean, so thick you could almost walk across it. And then 2 years later, gone. Not even a stem, completely barren. Looks like underwater deserts and just purple urchin all over the place. To the point where groups of recreational divers go and try to cull them, take as many as they can. But, they're like zombies. I guess they can go almost 2 years without eating. They can just go dormant and then come back to life if something, comes around. So
yeah, I heard it was even longer they can live. And this is part of the problem. That equilibrium, we rely on it in so many different spaces in life. Market economies are based on this idea of equilibrium, and our ecosystems, our human bodies, everything sort of exists under equilibrium. And with these Urchin Barrens, it's when they get so far out of whack that they're sort of almost beyond the point of recovery. And because those urchins live so long, the roe inside them gets poorer and poorer. They become in terrible condition, so they're of no nutritional value, but yet they've still taken over this area and it just destroys everything. Yeah,
and huge areas too, hundreds of meters of reef just wiped clean.
I was listening to your episode in This Ocean Life, and I think you were saying, or it might have been with Brett, but you were saying the kelp in your particular area is actually not too bad. You don't have too many of these Urchin Barrens. Is that right?
So this is just a theory of mine, not based on any science, just opinion. But I think the urchin, where I see the most Urchin Barrens is where depth comes quickly. So, like Carmel or parts of Northern California, like Mendocino, where right off the shore, you can drop quick to 50, 100 feet. In Santa Cruz, you have real slow, shallow continental shelf. So it takes almost a mile offshore to get to 100 feet of water. The majority of our diving is anywhere from 12, 15 to max 35, 40 feet.
Okay.
I don't see a lot of urchin at all. There's a ton of life. Over the years, I've seen the reefs I hunt get better, while parts of California just completely decline to waste.
It sounds like I read this paper, and I'll link it up in today's notes. It's called The Global Regime of Shift Dynamics of Catastrophic Sea Urchin Overgrazing. And there's a lot of huge academic language and stuff in this paper, but there's some good stuff if you dig into it. But it sounds like once the urchin biomass gets over a certain sort of, mass per square meter, they've got a sort of a measurement for when what that level is. It sort of just becomes non-reversible unless something dramatic changes. And one of the things they were saying is that here it is. It says in the recovery section, it says simply put. I'll read out the scientific thing and then I'll try and explain. It says, simply put, the available empirical evidence for rocky reef systems worldwide reveals that the abundance of sea urchins required to form barrens is greater than that required to maintain a barren, and that recovery of productive microalgal beds requires virtually all urchins to be removed. Once critical tipping points in urchin biomass are reached, barrens formation occurs in 1/3 of the time that is required for recovery of kelp beds, which they say is a minimum of 18 months once urchins have been removed from the area.
Wow.
But it's crazy because how do you remove them from the area? Obviously there are some natural predators. Like there's, you guys have got a lobster fishery there. I'm guessing some of your fish, like maybe the cabezon and some of the other bony reef fishes predate on purple urchin?
Up in Northern California, I don't know if there are any fish that really focus on them. I know the one we talked about, the sheephead, is definitely one. There may be a few others, but I think that's the main reason why they've been able to just overcome entire ecosystems, entire areas. A named beach, say Portuguese Beach and Mendocino was always an easy spot access where people would go look for abalone. There used to be a lot of kelp there. You go look in the kelp, you find them under the rocks and stuff. It's completely barren, and you find like one abalone on top of a rock just starving with its foot all withered up because it's just dying. There's no food or anything. So
yeah, righto. So you're saying rising ocean temps, increasing acidification. Do you think that that lobsters are in healthy numbers along that coastline, particularly where you see these urchin barrens forming?
So there's no lobster up by us. They're all pretty much south of about Point Conception is where you can go for them. I've seen them up here though, but I think down in Southern California, there's areas in the Channel Islands. One would be called Talcott Shoals. It's actually where I saw that great white on Santa Rosa Island. That area used to be, a mile, 2 miles of kelp thick, to the point where they used to harvest it with like these top of water lawnmower looking things. Now there's no kelp out there at all. And those fish and species that predate on urchin are out there. And I see urchin. I don't see giant urchin barrens like I do in Central California. So there's so many factors at play here. And then I remember one of the things I talked about with Brett was if these are cyclical things, like, is this a pattern that normally takes place, but it's being, rapidly sped up, or these cycles are taking place in shorter terms. I don't know. I've just spent a lot of time thinking about it because you watch the ocean get destroyed. You're like, what the hell's happening? Yeah,
for sure, man. Anytime we're looking in on something that's affecting our ecosystem, it is something we all care about and pay attention to. Have you ever used them as burley? Like one thing, like in New Zealand, it's pretty common. You pile up some urchin into a bunch. They call them kinner in New Zealand, and then turn your dive knife around. If you've got one of those dirty big scuba diving knives, they're even better. And then you just smash them up, or find a rock and just smash them up, and then you sort of hang back and just the smaller fish come in and start chewing, and then the snappers start getting interested and they'll come in. And have you tried? You tried it there?
Yeah, I've smashed up quite a bit of urchin in we call it like North Sur, in between Carmel and I would say Julia Pfeiffer Park, if you look it up. That area, North Big Sur. And there's quite a few Urchin Barrens. And, you know, when those barrens hit, there's not a lot of fish around. So definitely smash them up and try to bring something in, for sure.
It's good to feed the fish anyway. Sometimes I think, you know, like some people are like, oh, don't shoot fish or break stuff just to, you know, like there's a mindset around, you know, burley and stuff, and like how it's not really, you know, ethically correct or something. I kind of disagree. Like I kind of think, you know, like it's just like taking your fish carcasses back and putting them in the ocean. I kind of like giving it back into the sea where it comes from. It feeds up, you know, smaller microorganisms and stuff like that break it down, and then bigger stuff eat them, and then I start shooting them again, and then it's all one big circle. I mean,
and I'm sure those people have had a burger or a chicken sandwich and never asked, where did this come from?
Well, it came from Eric's mate Aiden, who took a shit and fed it to it. This is one thing, like people that just eat seafood from supermarkets should probably listen to this podcast. They might learn more about where their food comes from. Cool, man. So do you see any hope for the urchin system? Are you just kind of hoping that it's a cyclical thing, or do you have any ideas?
No, I do. There's a couple guys, I might screw his name up. There's a guy up in Northern California, Joel Russo. I'm not sure of his social media tag, but he has really kind of spearheaded this recreational community of divers coming together to, you know, they put events on, they get guys out there, put the spear guns down per day, just go after the urchin. So I think a mix of those efforts, as well as the great state of California's Fish and Wildlife and their excellent science and management, hopefully can come together and really get something done. But, you know, it's made the spotlight, it's made mainstream media. People know this is a huge problem, not just in California, but globally too. New Zealand and I think even South Africa and other places are experiencing this, hopefully.
Yeah, I had a couple of lists there. There was like Tasmania in Australia, like New South Wales and Norway, they've had issues with it. Like the urchin overgrazing, or the Urchin Barrens as we call it, like they've been it's been happening for a while, and like some of these barrens have been happening since the 70s that we know of, at the very least. So maybe it is cyclical, and maybe there is a recovery pattern, and maybe it's just a natural cycle that we have yet to sort of understand the full circle. So, but it's weird, you know, when you see a destruction of an area and you see this Urchin Barren and it just grows and grows and grows, and beyond 3 or 4 years, you're starting to think, is this permanent? Is this
exactly? Is
this reversible? You know, because that's the scary thing.
No, exactly. I mean, like this, there's a real famous beach in California called Van Dam State Beach. It's probably the easiest shore diving in the entire state because it's just a super protected cove. It was always full of tons of kelp. Now it's all gone. I mean the abalone, they sit there. It's not like they can move around and find a new spot. So then they just all die off and the shells wash up, and then the entire area is just gone. And to your point, when is it going to recover? And I don't think 18 months. A lot longer than that.
Well, now that we've just like done a depressing deep dive into something that neither of us
the world's falling apart, the ocean's falling apart.
Aiden wanted me to ask you about how do you fillet fish on a boat?
Oh man, well, I say keep them in the box and wait till you get back to the harbor. Now I shot my best ling this year, and was cleaning them on the boat because with kids, you know, you get home, the wife knows it's still like an hour process. Clean the gear, you know, do this, do that. Try to do some of it before I get back to the house. And I had one of the fillets, and I literally picked it. I went to pick it up, and it slipped right into the water. And as soon as I saw it go, I tried to dive in after it and couldn't get it. It made to the bottom. I could never find it.
Oh man, that would have hurt. That would have hurt.
But no, thanks, Aiden.
This is a funny thing, eh? When podcast hosts know your dive buddies' names, eh? It's terrible. This episode of the Noob Spearo podcast is brought to you by the world's greatest spearfishing magazine, Spearing Magazine. There are news and reviews for the latest spearfishing equipment and gadgets inside. There's practical how-to and DIY type articles. There's spearing adventures from crazy noobers like you from all over the world. And it's a magazine that you can pick up or you can look at, and if you've got the digital subscription, you can flick through and let it inspire your next spearfishing adventure, even if you're having a dry run. Keep the stoke alive. Check it out at spearingmagazine.com. If you're away from the good old USA though, check out the international subscription. That's at spearingmagazine.com. Simple, accurate, deadly. Use the code NOOB, N-O-O-B, and save $30 on any spear gun for a limited time only. Go to killshotspearguns.com, check them out for yourself. Handmade in the Florida Keys by Ed Martin. Use the code NOOB, N-O-O-B, or head into the shop and say, "Crikey, mate." And apparently Ed will hook you up with a $30 discount on any timber spear gun. Get your hands on one. killshotspearguns.com. Like, if we went back to like the start of your spearfishing journey, like I don't know much about it. So 2013. How old are you now?
I'll be 34 in November.
So you were 26, 25?
Yeah, I was 25. Yeah, my son was born February 2013. I was 25. So you were physically fit? You just come out of the Marines? Yeah, I was in the Marine Corps from 2007 to 2012. I was a machine gunner with 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines, and anyone that says they're a machine gunner, just think they're a caveman because it takes no smarts or skill. No, I'm kidding. Of course.
Strong like ox, smart like tractor.
Yeah, they're like, "Hey, you're big, go on that line." I said, "Okay, sounds good."
How big are you? How big are you? Well, how tall are you?
Oh, I'm like I'm about 6'2", 235 on a good day.
All right, nice.
Probably about 250, really, right?
Yeah. I know exactly what you mean.
No, but after the Marine Corps, my wife got me scuba certified. That was a gift. And I was all pumped. I did the class, got to the ocean, did a dive, and they wanted to get out. And they're like, "Oh, we'll come back tomorrow." I'm like, "What do you mean come back tomorrow? We're right here. Let's go again." And I was just stoked. And right after that, I was picking my father-in-law's brain. He's been diving since the 60s. Been diving for 50 years. Same group of buddies all this time. Met them all. Excellent divers. But they had that old school mentality where it was like, just go out and figure it out. All right, see you back at the shore. And they all go different directions for 5 hours. So, yeah. And so that's what I thought it was all about. So I got an old Voight Swim Master spear gun, a 22-inch spear gun with 2 bands, aluminum. A Voight, I think, if you know what JBL is now, that model, it was an old brand.
Okay. And
I went out with that thing, no safety, had a 865 scuba suit with a detached hood, no gloves, scuba booties and scuba fins, threw some weight around my waist and went after it and probably made 100 dives that way.
Wow.
And just went for it for years and started shooting fish and learning. I didn't grab long fins till about 3 years ago.
Wow.
I was just stubborn. I was like, "Oh, this is fine. I'm good." And for abalone diving, the biggest ab I ever got, I could stand up in the water. So I didn't see a point in buying all that extra stuff. And then when I started getting serious about spearfishing about 2016, I bought some long fins, plastic fins. I was like, "Oh, wow. Okay, I get it now." And then I, move my snorkel around, try this and that. You start tweaking your gear and you're like, "Okay, I get it." Finally bought a free diving suit, 7mm open cell, and was like, "Oh, wow." Why did I not do this years ago?
Yeah, man. Like, what does your father-in-law think of all the new gear?
Oh, he thinks we're all kooks. He's like, "What do you?" They wore, he learned from guys diving that used to wear wool sweaters. Yeah. Because wetsuits weren't around, not until Jack O'Neill and all that craze. So, he's like, you learned to be a hard diver back then, and you paid your dues. But I did that for a while, and then I went through a whole string of buddies of trying to find people to spearfish. I didn't know anybody. I mean, this is the same story you hear from so many guys. I didn't know anybody, and I didn't look at YouTube either. I didn't even think about looking at YouTube. I just went diving because I wanted to learn and just go. And took a couple people on the kelp that freaked out. I didn't have experience, saving anybody. And I finally realized, all right, there's some safety aspects to this. I'm going to get myself in trouble if I keep dragging people out in the ocean that have never done it before. Yeah. And then Aiden hit me up in 2017 and was like, hey, I want to get into diving. It's like, finally somebody. And then it was just on like gangbusters, because now we have the unspoken language. We can make eye contact. We know each other's thinking. We can dive and sink. So, and now we just get after it, and working as a team, we shoot a lot more fish than I ever did by myself, for sure.
A lifelong bromance was begun. I I read Aiden's recent article in Spearing Mag, and it was cool. It was cool to read his perspective on things as well. And I'm sure he'll come on the show at some stage in the future as well. Maybe we'll get both of you boys back, or I'll do a live one while I'm there with you guys. That'd be pretty cool. But what kinds of things the benefits of having a long-term buddy where you develop and learn communication strategies and an understanding that doesn't need to be talked about, because talking on the surface is painful sometimes. That's the time where you want to be relaxing or swimming up current to the next bommy or whatever it is. So really, you want to keep the verbals to a minimum at times, I think. So what are some of the things that has he from an ex-military background as well?
No, we actually, he's about 7 years younger than me. We met while I was working at a winery in the town I live in now, while I was going to school at San Jose State. And then one day he just hit me up and was like, man, I want to go diving. I bought a wetsuit. I went swimming in it. Let's go. And it's been on since then. I mean, having a buddy like that, there's so many positives to it. I mean, right off the bat, we know the areas well. We come up with a quick game plan before we hit the water. I know he has my back. I'm watching his. We get out to the reef, Rochambeau, who gets to make the first dive. And from there, whoever's the one making a dive, they're watching, you're watching their back. The visibility is always so poor, you can't see each other, in 30 feet of water. But we dive with high vis float lines, so you know where your buddy is, you're following the bubbles, and you just need to stay aware and try to stay above them as best as possible. Try to follow them. You're not doing anybody any service or watching their back. If they pop up so far away from you, you can't do anything to help them. Now, I'm not going to preach, because I haven't taken a free diving class. I just have listened to this podcast. I started to take Ted Hardy's online courses. I just haven't coughed out the money to do it, and time. If I have the time, I always want to go shoot fish. So.
Yeah, fair enough, man. I get it. I 100% get it. And let's be real honest. If you go and do a freediving course, if you do 6 hours in a controlled environment with a freediving instructor, sometimes you'll learn more in that than you would in 6 hours in the ocean, but sometimes you won't. And I'm not discrediting the freediving qualifications, because I think if everyone has access to a course, go and do it, because there's stuff that you'll learn in those classes that you won't learn on your own. Absolutely. Even if you watch YouTube and you do all the stuff like that, if it's a freediving instructor that knows what they're doing, that's what they specialize in. They're going to teach you stuff that you can't learn on your own. But I hear what you're saying, man. So I get it.
And I plan to take one. I hear everybody say that too, but it's going to happen. But we know each other's limits. We know each other's bottom times. If he's been down at 30 feet for more than 45 seconds a minute, because we're working so hard, you can't see anything. You're constantly looking for structure. But that's one of the other benefits of working with a buddy is, to your point, you don't want to talk a lot on the surface, but once you come up, if I'm at the end of my breath hold and I'm like, okay, I know I need to come up, and I start to see a ledge or something, and don't go over there and start spooking everything. Just get them up, and 100%. I go, hey, 20 feet that way, big ledge on your left, or sometimes I'll just leave my gun down there, marked it, follow my float line.
Yep.
And then boom, he goes after it, and then he finds a big fish, and we leapfrog that way.
Yep.
And it's always on that next leapfrog where I find a big fish or he
Yep.
finds one. But you go in there, you try to screw it up, and you screw yourself, you screw your buddy over.
Yeah, I love working a spot with one or two buddies that just know exactly what they're doing. Like, you know, like if you're in current or whatever, someone shoots a fish in a hole. You know, unless your buddy's straight onto that and down and pulling that fish out for you, you're going to be tying a float line onto that, and you're going to be circling back up the top of that drift with a boat. You know, like, you know, if you put a slightly crap shot in a fish, like, you know, having a second shot right there is just, there's like, having a good buddy is just like, when you've dived with a good buddy versus having no buddy, you can understand. The problem is when people dive with shit buddies, because I would rather go diving by myself than diving with a shit buddy, because not only they scare all the fish away, they don't watch your back, they don't look after you. As far as I'm concerned, I'd rather swim 50 meters in the other direction because I'm probably safer as well. I don't have to worry about them discharging their gun into my leg or something if I'm lucky.
I've dove with a few guys who I won't name names, but I'll be doing a breathe up. And I'll look around, and they're just swimming ashore. They just went in. They didn't even tell me.
Yeah.
My father-in-law did that to me one time, and I thought he drowned. I looked for him for 45 minutes in the bottom. I thought he was gone.
Wow.
I came back. He was at the car. I'm like, it's not 1968, man.
It's the worst feeling in the world when you don't know if your mate or your family is safe. Like, holy shit. Like, I hate that feeling, man. Even when your mate does a longer drop, you know, like, if we're in clean, warm water or whatever, sometimes I'll dive with guys they'll make 2-minute drops. I seldom, if ever, make drops like that. But if like a guy's gone for a minute, you're like, oh yeah. A minute 30, I'm like, oh shit, where is he? 2 minutes, I'm like, holy moly. Am I going to have to do like a 20-meter rescue here? Like, you know what I mean? I'm starting to get ready to, you know, and but it's a bad feeling. I hate it. Or even like, you know, like I've had situations where you're diving off the back of a boat and you're on different sides of the boat after a dive and you can't see your mate and you're looking around and the person on the boat's distracted as well and they're not telling you that he's on the other side of the boat and you're like, you know, you feel like an arsehole for losing your buddy too. So.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, all those situations.
And, you know, it's hard to find people who can be as in sync with you. And it's hard to find, it was hard for me to find somebody who is jacked and about spearfishing. Like my garage is a spear shop.
Yeah.
If like at any time I got enough spear gun rubber and everything to tie new bands on 10 guns. So I just, you know, and Aiden's like that. A lot of people aren't.
So, I mean, what are the things like, I'm not asking you to shine them on or whatever, but what do you think it takes to be a really good buddy? Like, obviously you've identified like Stoke, they care, but to me, it seems like there's other factors involved as well.
Well, spearfishing is a lifestyle. I mean, it's not a sport. It's not a hobby. I mean, think about it. You dedicate all of your being to doing this one thing where you're going to go into the most extreme element other than space. And you're going to go search for food where there's 14-foot great whites cruising all over the place and your buddy's going to watch your back, you know. You get the food and then you come home with them and you eat it and you eat it with your kids and your family and your friends. And then you post about it and you talk about it and you think about it for the next week until the next dive. I mean, it literally is a lifestyle. And then so finding people who are just like that is what really makes a good buddy because he enjoys it for the same reasons and the qualities. And then he's just smart. I know that, he cares about his life. He cares about mine. So he's going to make good decisions in the water. And then the last aspect is that he carries a tourniquet. So if I get schwacked by a white shark and I'm coherent and bleeding out, he's going to slap it on me and drag me to shore. I mean, that's a big problem here in California. And of course, where you are as well in the world. So
a lot of people think like a lot of sharks that we encounter in the ocean that are problematic with spearos, like bull sharks and tigers and you know, oceanic white tips and things like that. Like they can be problematic. Like in New Zealand, they get bronze whalers and like various whalers are problematic. A lot of them are competing for the same fish that we are. But great whites are something else. I've never dived with one. Like when they get over a certain size, they're predominantly feeding on mammals, like marine mammals. Like fish makes up, I think it doesn't even make up much of their diet, if any. So they're eating seals and things like that. Like whales and whatever else that they can get hold of, I think. But so that's a different experience, I think, than most sharks. Great whites are something different. They're unlike anything else, apart from maybe orcas, which are, something else again. But what are some of the things you've learned? Okay, so we'll go with tourniquet. So you get hit by a great white. What tourniquet are you using, and what's the advantage of using that over a float line?
So, I hear people say, I can grab my float line or I'll be able to pull my bands off. But the reality is you're going to bleed out in 3 minutes. If you hit your femoral artery or any of those big arteries or anything else. In other areas, 15 minutes. Your heart's beating a million miles an hour. You think you're going to die. You're panicking. Your buddy's panicking. So I use a combat action tourniquet. I attach it to the front of my dive belt. And it's a pretty foolproof system. I've only had it come off one time, probably 100 dives. I take a piece of bungee cord and I make a loop. I double it up, tie a knot, and make a loop that's about 3 inches by 3 inch circle.
Okay.
And I put that as a double wrap over the tourniquet on the front of my belt. Aiden does the same. That tourniquet on my belt is likely for him to grab to apply to me or vice versa.
Okay.
Or for myself. We've talked about it, the scenarios, and this is just from my time in the Marine Corps. Like, you kind of practice what you preach. You go over it, you take it apart, you know how you're going to pull it together. You rinse it off after the dive, dry it quickly, keep it out of the sun, and it lasts a long time. So, if you can just learn to dive one, I see people dive with 2 knives or this piece of gear and that. Well, ditch one of those and put a tourniquet on your belt. It's lightweight, and you're going to have a far better chance of saving your buddy's life or your life if you're coherent and, can keep it together enough.
Can I get a picture from you, or a couple of pictures of this setup, so I can include it in today's show notes? So if people go to noobspearo.com/Eric, ERIC, I will link up pictures of Eric's tourniquet setup. So it's a combat action tourniquet. Can you buy these things everywhere? Yeah,
they're like $30 on Amazon. There's other tourniquets, but it's the same one I use in the Marine Corps, so I figure if it worked there, it's gonna work.
And it's like, how to use it,
exactly.
in the Marines or any military.
It's Velcro, so you just unstrap it. You can make the loop big real quick. You wrench the Velcro over. You crank down the plastic knob as tight as you can get it, and then there's a little place where you can stick it in a hook and get another Velcro on. Ideally, in a real situation, you want to ride the time on there, so you know when you applied it, but get back to shore. So, and then I've heard people. Just quickly, I hear people say, I put it on there's a tourniquet on the boat. Well, you have to swim all that distance back to the boat, and he's lost. He or she has lost all that blood, so it's best to just have it on you.
Yeah, I'm thinking I'm getting with your picture. I haven't done it yet, but recent sort of stories I've heard and your experiences sort of convincing me to invest in this myself, I think. So in terms of training for using one of these tourniquets, what do guys just buy them, and are they like a one-time use type thing, or you can use them again and again?
Oh, you can use them again and again. This thing is designed that way. It's got a little piece of fabric material where the 6-inch rubber, plastic long pieces.
Yep.
I just rinse it with fresh water and let it dry and apply it, and it should work multiple times. Yeah.
It's not just great whites. Like, we can get hit by boat props. You can stab yourself with your knife, or
who was it? Recent episode. What's his from Adrenal?
Wayne.
Yeah. Yeah, even the most experienced guys, it happens. So
100%, yeah.
Yeah.
And Aiden was asking you about that filleting in boats. I thought it was going to talk about like a cut or something, because exactly the same time when Wayne stabbed himself, another guy dropped his dive knife like from about 1 foot up straight onto his quad, like his quad muscle. And the thing just stabbed straight into his leg. You know how razor sharp dive knives are. And it was like watching an ickier fish, but it was his quad. And those two guys did that at exactly the same time. And we were, four dories were out, and 2 of the dories were bringing back injured divers on the same day. And it was bizarre, man. And then, I was taking the piss out of Wayne, but jeepers, it can happen to anyone, eh?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, too, is and it always happens when you least expect it, of course. You could be down at the bottom, pull your dive night out, and you go to cut some kelp, you slice your hand open. I mean, it happens all the time.
Do you night dive where you are?
For lobster,
Yeah.
not too much here. There's a few guys here in Santa Cruz that have bigger balls than me and go night diving for halibut in the wee hours. But
Night diving can be real relaxing, I found. Like
Yeah,
obviously being scared of everything beyond the sort of the light of your the shadows are scary, the unknown.
Oh yeah.
But you're used to diving in 2 meters or 6 feet of visibility. So for you it's just
exactly.
like this is what I do every day.
Yeah, Santa Cruz water is like I'd say the average viz is about 8 foot.
Yeah.
Really good is 20. It can be worse. In the early years from 14 to 16, 17, in 2017, I would go regardless of conditions, just when I could go. Mm-hmm. And if it was a foot in front of my face, then I just stuck near the bottom and looked for a hole. A hole in my eyeball.
It is funny how viz can open out though. Like, you might be out in 3 foot of viz and then, you get out in one part and it's like the current or the eddy is making for this strange situation where all of a sudden you might have 10 feet.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you can hunt and you're like, I'm just going to stay here.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it took me 3 years to realize to hunt on the upcurrent side of a reef. And just to your point, I could swim through the first 2/3 of the reef and it could just be, shit brown. And then I get to the head of the reef and the viz opens up and the fish are there. I always thought when I first realized that, like, God, why didn't someone tell? I wish someone would have told me this. I spent all that time. But you know what? That's part of the experience, and that's why everyone should go through their licks and learn. I haven't been doing it a long time, but I see a lot of divers today. They gain all this knowledge in 4 months, and then they're shooting bluefin tuna. And I'm like, when's my turn to shoot a bluefin tuna?
You just got to get yourself a sponsorship, man. Like, just maybe 8 or 9
all
sponsors.
Those brands out there, I'm your guy.
Bluefin tuna Anderson. Yeah. So, like, as to your point with dirty water diving, persevering through those shit days, it gives you a treasure trove of knowledge and wisdom to draw back on. It also helps you appreciate the good stuff when it comes along.
Exactly.
But what are some of the other lessons you've learned besides, heading to the upcurrent? Like, is there other sort of critical stuff that you think there is to, like, I notice with a lot of guys that start spearfishing, like, they want to stay fairly shallow, they feel safer in there. But when you're diving in swell, like, that's where all the stirred up crap is going to be. Yeah. And sometimes it's where the fish are too. So, like, it might be where you go, but other times it's like, well, you're actually going to be more comfortable if you swim out another couple of 100 yards or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, like on the inside edge of a reef, learning that, the direction of swell impact where some fish want to hide or hang out, knowing what other fish species or bait to look for. So if you start seeing little balls of bait, start looking for, some olive rockfish and some fish that are suspended in the water column, maybe going after them. If you find, schools of blacks or blues, which are typically a smaller species of rockfish, and they school up a lot, start looking toward the bottom. There could be big lingcod or other predatory fish kind of hanging out. So you kind of pick up on those little triggers. And then when you start to just, it's like in the military, where you set a baseline, what you should expect. And then when you start looking at the reef and it looks a little off, or the fish are acting funny, but it's not because they're reacting to you, just something's going on, slow down and start looking around, because there's likely a big predatory fish in the area. More often than not, a big lingcod has made his presence known and the reef comes alive like, oh crap.
How do you track fish and shoot fish in really shit viz? Because, like, half the time it's like, you just identify the fish and then it's gone. So it's like, what's that gap where you pull the trigger, or and I mean the other thing with firearm safety, like, skyline stuff, you were taught never shoot it, and I know a spear gun hasn't got the same range as like a 30-06 or something, but if you're in 6 feet of viz, you identify the fish and it's kind of a meter off the bottom, but you're flat on the bottom. And you shoot it, you don't really know what's behind that thing. Yeah,
no, it's true. In really bad viz, you can lose a fish real quick. More often than not, you just have to kind of have a feel and sense, okay, did it flick fast? Did it maybe go left or right? Has it kept the same speed as it keeps going? So you're kind of judging this all in about, 1.2 seconds. And you got to be quick. And the other benefit I found too is a lot of guys use about a 70 centimeter or longer gun. In Santa Cruz, I have like a 28-inch gun, real short. Because you get quick track on the fish, you can move it quick. It's almost like a pistol. You're not going to have a 10-foot shot anyways. You're making a 5 to 8 foot shot. And then a lot of the fish really hole up. So they'll be under ledges, kind of sitting still. That's how we find a lot of them too. Lingcod and cabezone will always be kind of hunkered down and something. Sometimes they'll spook easy. Sometimes they'll sit there and you can poke them in the face and they don't move. And well, then it's kind of like, all right, well, I'm going to shoot you now, buddy.
Yeah. Isn't it funny how like you can be on the same reef hunting the same fish and their response to you is completely different, and there's no real other variables at play. It's just like you can't even pinpoint what the variables are because your body language is the same, your technique and your approach was the same, but the way those fish treat you and deal with you is just completely different. I find it weird. I'm trying to figure it out. It's just, and then it's a problem too because it's like some days it's like, shit, I'm good, and it's like, well, no, you're not. Just the fish were really dumb on that day, you know what I mean? And you go back there the next day and you can't shoot them, you can't shoot them, you can't get close to them. So
it's like some fish have personalities, I think. Some species like, they say sharks have personalities, when you start to see sharks and they have markings, you see them over time and they act different and they're ornery, some come close, some will stay far away. I think some fish like lingcod and others would be very similar. They're not always the same. Some are super curious. Some spook right away. Some will let you come close. Others are like iguanas. You could probably pet them and they don't move. So it's interesting.
Do you think, like with your experience, like do you feel like fish will adapt to regular predation from spearfishing? Do you think that they start staying further away? They start hiding more and more? What do you think? Or do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I would say in Santa Cruz, there's only so many spots. And when the weather does open up and you get good conditions, it can get a lot of pressure. I bet they probably push off the reef a little bit if guys are going like a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, then a Tuesday, Thursday or something like that. But I haven't seen it too much. I don't know. I mean,
it's because where you go, no one's there.
If your buddy had a blackout on your next spearfishing trip, think, what would the outcome of that be? Do you know how to revive someone from a blackout? Would you even be in a position to do something about it? Or would you be diving, chasing after a fish as your buddy sinks down to the bottom of the ocean? Do you know where most blackouts happen? Do you know what you can do to minimize your risk of having a blackout? My name is Ted Hardy, and I'm the founder of freedivingsafety.com. In my free online course, you will learn the truth about shallow water blackout, the myth of I don't push myself, I know my limits, I'm in tune with my body, how to minimize your risk of having a blackout, and most importantly, how to save your buddy's life if they have one. Visit freedivingsafety.com to sign up for your free course today. Dive safe out there. It's not even that hard.
Aiden had one more little story to ask you about.
Great.
Yeah. I'm sure he'd probably give me some more at some stage. He wanted me to ask about diving without a float line.
Well, it's funny. If you read that Spearing Magazine article that day, it was a great decision and a bad decision, I'll say. So he scored a huge fish, but we went on in really poor conditions. I mean, rough as shit. And it was a shore dive. And we're trying to stay together, but I mean, like, whitewash foam. It was like a river mouth pushing all over the place. And I hear him hollering maybe 15, 20 feet away. He's like, I got something big. And right then I'm hollering at him.
Lost your fin.
I lost. Well, so this is funny. He yells at me, I got something big. I yelled at him. I lost my spear gun. And I didn't put a float line on that day for whatever reason. And it started drifting. It just drifted off. So he wants me to come check out his fish. I'm yelling at him to come help me find my gun. then he tries to come out there. He breaks his fin in half. Then he's like half waddling, swimming all over the place. And I find the gun, and we're finally like, let's get the hell out of
here. Yeah, that's right. I'm remembering it all now.
Oh yeah, it was just no, it was it was one of those days where we were both been out of the water for about 3-4 weeks, and we just needed to get in and
get some
for it.
Get some vitamin C.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And
with jumping in big surf, like it seems like you do a little bit of that. Like you got cliff tops, and then you guys are jumping out into swell. How do you plan your exit conditions, like your exit spots and points and stuff? And what's your sort of school of thought with planning? Do you have a plan A and a plan B, or?
Yeah, so I always try to find that first spot, whether it's like a little mussel shoal or somewhere I can climb out. That's what I try to find first. Getting in is the easy part. Getting out, of course, is the difficult part. And then I always try to have a spot where, okay, if I can't get out here and this cliff is to shit, where's the next easy access? Can I swim somewhere? Is there a beach nearby? So in Santa Cruz, I used to jump in off the mussel shoals and then try to get back in that way, and you get washed around. And then once you get to a point where you realize, all right, this is not going to go in my favor, you bail out, get out of there if you can, and then go to a nearby beach and just make the couple 100-yard walk back to your car instead of getting out right where it is. In Big Sur, a lot of guys, you have to hike down crazy cliffs. You jump into the water. It's really rough. Unfortunately, sometimes guys do pass away by doing that kind of diving. So it's like, it's risk and reward. You know, how bad do you want to go? But I've got banged around a couple times. I will say one piece of advice for anyone who jumps into 6-8 foot surf to go spearfishing is don't fight the water. Really try to go with it. It will push you up onto the rock. Just be ready to latch on like an iguana when you can.
Yeah.
And those guys in Hawaii, you see those guys, they jump into, what's his name? I think it's Brian Fern, Uncle Learn You How. If you've been following him and his videos, but he's done some gnarly shore dives, and I've seen some videos of Justin Lee and Ryan Myers. And I mean, they jump into crazy surf. Because they get out to the outside to do their diving, but then they have to come back in, and it's like running the gauntlet.
Yeah. Do you find like one thing for me is when you decide that you're going to do it, like, and you commit to it, you just got to go 100%. Like, there's no like halfway then going, oh no, I can't do it now. I just turn around and you're committed. It's like balls to the wall kind of stuff.
Exactly. You're committed. You got to give it your all, your attention, and you got to be thinking the whole time and have good situational awareness. So, it's not like you just show up and jump in the water. I'll watch the water for half an hour and I'll look at like the best possible spot. And then I'll start, timing it and be like, okay, the first couple, this set's going to come, the bigger set's going to come in. It's going to do this, wait for that second or third set, that lull set, or right after the closeout, and then make your entrance. And the same coming in too. Like, you have to be comfortable sitting offshore for a little bit and just sitting there and waiting for that right moment and knowing where it's going to be, and then you beeline for it. And then if you don't make that moment, bail out if you can, or hold on for dear life.
As a guy that's done a lot of shore diving, I've noticed recently, like, you've started doing a fair bit more boat diving. How have you found that transition? Has that made spearfishing even better for you, or?
I love both. I think a shore dive is quick when it's time dependent, but Aiden's got the 18-foot fish right. And I mean, I love that boat. It's nice when your buddy has a boat. I don't have to worry about anything.
Yeah.
He's got all that to worry, but it's so nice to be able to go out and we'll anchor. Sometimes if we're trying to bounce and just check out a spot, I'll run Buddy quick and he'll just make a drop like, oh yeah, that's good, throw it down kind of thing. But it's fun. Plus, we go out to the Channel Islands for us is pretty amazing.
How have you guys figured out the electronics and stuff? Like, are you getting good at like using the gain and looking for bait and all that sort of stuff? Like, how do you find spots on the sounder?
Yeah, so we do a lot of fishing as well. And
Okay.
by fishing, we were able to find quite a few spots. And then just from a lot of the shore dives, being able to find spots. But then we'll just run around and look for reef. And then more often than not, we'll just try a lot of new spots. That's how we find them. Just anchor up and go swim around for an hour, give it an hour. If it's nothing, pull up and go try another spot. But more often than not, a lot of these reefs, if you find a good kelp bed and you start to see fish after about 10 minutes, you're going to start finding stuff.
What's the sort of like, you know, you're jumping in at new spots and there's always a temptation to stay. But then a lot of guys will say you get in, you spend 3 minutes, and if it's not on, you get back in the boat and you move and you find another spot. What's your rule of thumb for that? Like, because you can waste a lot of time exploring shit terrain.
Yeah, I think for us, you know, we give it some more time just based on the conditions. If I have that visibility and you know, you made a drop and you can see, okay, there's nothing cruising by, then I would go the 3 minute rule. But I'm not going to find a ledge in 3 minutes or you know, anything like that. But about, you know, an hour. And it also depends how much time we have out. If you know, we've got 6 hours total, then we want to maximize our time. But it's funny too, because then to that point, sometimes you don't leave and you give a spot 3 hours and nothing. And then at the very end, you find, you know, some solid fish. And I can't tell you how many times that's happened. So it's just, my biggest ling caught in Santa Cruz was right around 17 pounds, which is pretty good. But, you know, guys do shoot 25 plus pounders up in the northern parts of California. But we dove for almost 6 hours that day from shore. I tracked our what I thought was our pattern. It was like 3 miles on Google Earth, you know, where we went in this reef. Yeah. And on the way back, right in front of the beach where we went in, I checked a ledge, like the last ledge I checked, and I shoot my personal best ling for, you know, the local water. So it's just how it goes. That same dive too, I think I saw a juvenile white shark. It was too barrel chested to be anything else. It swam about 10 feet underneath me and just kept going. And Aiden wasn't far away. And I was like, hey, gave him the signal. You know, it's always funny to me when people see a shark and they're like, shark! Yeah. Yelling. You want it to come over to you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like you're doing the exact thing to get the shark to pay attention to you.
Flash a lot and yell, he'll swim off.
Yeah, you really want like confident body language and you know, even if you're not feeling it, you've got to still make yourself, you know, like I had this conversation on another podcast a little while ago. It's like, all we're trying to do is disincentivize them attacking us because they know that we're not really much of a threat. But all you need to be is a little threat because a big shark didn't get big by being dumb. Like, yeah. But great whites is something else, man. I don't envy you diving with them in dirty water. At least you've got a good buddy and a tourniquet and you guys know how to use it. Like,
and we did both at the end of this last year get the shark shield.
Yep.
I haven't put the electric rope on yet. A lot of guys swear by them. I'm going to give it a whirl. I mean, why not?
I've heard I've heard mostly positive things, to be honest. And I've dived with the guy that had one on. The only problem was he kept giving me shocks when I'd swim around him. He just sort of Sikaflexed it into the side of which is like an epoxy or something, like it's an adherent to sort of, and he ran it down the side channel of one of his fins. So
I remember that episode.
Yeah.
I was thinking about how he did that, and it kind of kept it back away a little bit.
Yeah, and but every time I would swim around back of him, I'd just getting these shocks off the bloody thing, and it gave me the shits. But he didn't really have to deal with many sharks. He's actually the dude that gave me the nickname Shrek too, funnily enough. So
now, a lot of serious guys around here swear by him and use them every single dive. You know, there's some really well-known Spiros, Dan Silvera, and others who wear them religiously. I just got to throw it on. Maybe I've got too comfortable diving in poor viz and everything else. And
I'm getting the guy on that patented and made the technology. He you know, the guy from the company. It's going to happen sometime this year. I haven't locked it in yet, but he's coming on the show. There was some testing done by Terra Australis. There's a YouTube channel. One of the previous guests, Andre, he films for them, but they researched and they tested a bunch of these shark deterrent products, and the Shark Shield is the one that sort of had the most, the best effect, I guess you'd say.
Yeah.
But hard to run scientific experiments in an ocean environment with, you know, given the nature of what you're trying to study, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, but yeah, I would be happy to hear what you have to say about them when you start wearing yours. So.
And there's a guy named Chris Oak. I think he's a marine biologist down in Southern California. He's had a couple gnarly encounters with white sharks, and he's got video footage of it, one at Catalina Island. And I'm pretty sure he has video of a white shark, probably of the 12 to 14 foot range, skyrocketing at him at 30 miles an hour and veering off last minute because he was wearing one. I think that's happened to him 3 times.
Yeah, wow. Some people are shark magnets. Shit shark magnets, we'll call them. Like, it seems like it, far out. I wear that hex wetsuit sometimes. And
Oh, yeah.
last time I was out, I just wore the hex top and not the bottoms. And I had this bull shark, and the bloody thing just followed me. I saw it on 4 or 5 dives, eh? The first time he snuck up behind me, and the jeepers it gave me a fright. It was probably only about 2.5 meters, but that's a big, fat, nasty-looking bully shark and shit viz. It was just not pleasant at all. And then, you know, like, you can't get a decent breath hold. My breath hold's already pathetic, and then I add in the pressure from a shark, and I'm just like, oh, this is awful. But what do you do?
It's funny when like you guys have to deal with so many different kinds of sharks and all over the world, 20 different species of sharks coming off the reef who might, come and bug you. We just have a big, the big one who leads around.
The worst one.
Yeah. But what's crazy in Santa Cruz is from April to October, we have anywhere from 20 to 30 juvenile white sharks. So all in like the 8-10 foot range, cruising all over the beaches. And right outside the surf line, you see drone footage from some guy on the beach, and those poor people on vacation have no idea there's a 10 foot white shark 20 feet outside of where they're boogie boarding. And they're just oblivious to it.
I used to do a lot of boogie boarding, and now that I spearfish, I think I'm more wary of bloody doing it. Like, I'd
much rather be underwater than on the surface.
Yeah, or even on the surface, but looking down so you can see what's underneath you. But just sitting there on a boogie board, just staring out, looking for the next decent wave that comes from out the back line. It's just like, I don't know. It doesn't seem like a smart idea anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about other scary stuff that's happened to you? Like, have you had any like near misses, like real stuff that really made you sort of change something that you do?
Yeah, I in 2014 I was reaching for an abalone in a hole, maybe about 30 feet down, and my brother-in-law was on the surface, and I reached in the hole to get the shell. I couldn't get the shell out. I let go of the shell, and I couldn't get my arm out. My flashlight got caught, and at first I started to panic. I'm getting all crazy. And I remember looking at the surface, and it started to rain, and everything started to slow down. And then I just undid the thing on my wrist, pulled my hand out, and came up, But it just made me realize, like, don't reach deep in holes with shit on your wrists. You don't stick your arm in a hole. Those kinds of like little tiny lessons, but
man, I thought you were going to give me some profound, like, and I had this moment where I realized I just needed to calm down, but that was just infinitely practical.
Little things like that where, well, of course, it's kind of, keeping your cool as best as possible, but in the most practical sense, if you got shit hanging all over your wrist, a flashlight, a lobster gauge and everything, you don't stick your hand down there and then expect it not to get caught, the things like that, or pay attention where you stick your feet. I couldn't tell you how many times I've like been so focused on a lobster, I wedge my foot or break a fin or get my, ankle twisted or something. Cause I'm just so focused on, the hunt or the game. I'm not thinking about where I'm flailing my extremities everywhere. And I think it really is about just being comfortable in the water. I think that's the first thing. If you're uncomfortable in any way, shape, or form, then you're pretty much, in my opinion, you're kind of screwed. Bottom time, you're not, you know, breathe up, you're not focused, you know, something as simple as, oh, my fins are too tight, my foot keeps cramping. Or, you know, oh man, I wish I didn't stab that urchin with my finger, you know, something like that. You know, it's just, like, just being comfortable and relaxed goes a long way. Goes a long way.
I'm going to talk with you about gear in the next bit, but I wanted to show you, like, because you can see, you've got the video camera, people at home can't, but this company in Western Australia, I'm going to get this guy on the show. His name's Bert, and he's got a company called Old Man Blue. How about that for a spike?
Damn.
That's a big spike, isn't it? And he said, like, all of his stuff, like, it's just really well made. Like, this is the cray bag. He's just sent me this stuff for free.
Oh, nice.
He sent me this cray bag, just like everything's stainless, heavy gauge. Like, it's the sort of stuff you expect a commercial diver to use. And and a couple of these cool shirts as well. I'm going to send this one to you.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Old Man Blue, I like that.
That's cool. Yeah, I thought you'd like it too. That's partly why I'm pulling it out. But I only arrived yesterday. I've got one as well, so I'll send you one.
I saw that. I was wondering what the Old Man Blue was.
Yeah, I like it. I like the guys coming on the show. Like, it sounds like he just nuts out on gear and stuff, and he really cares about what he does. Like, he's never gonna. It's not going to be a multi-million-dollar business. You know, he's making niche, really high quality spearfishing gear for people that are obsessed and just froth on it. So I knew you'd like that shirt, and you're about my size, so I'm going to send you that one.
Awesome.
Are you listening into this podcast thinking about your neglected spear guns down in the shed? But if you're like me, go to neptonics.com, buy yourself some new rubber, some new rigging, get your spear gun tip top so that you're ready when that fishing trip comes around the corner. You get the random phone call, we've got to wear the window, the fish are running, let's get into it. Neptonics.com. To sweeten it up, use the code NOOB10 to save 10% off store-wide at neptonics.com. Get those spear guns sorted, don't be like Shrek. So with gear, like, because it sounds like you're pretty tight as well, so you obviously spend money pretty smart.
Yeah, I try to, and I used to make a lot of my own stuff, my own float lines, stringers, weight belt configurations, dive knife holsters, because my father-in-law gave me a dive knife and I didn't have one, so I made one. Lanyards for my flashlights and everything. And then, over time I bought some stuff, but I've accumulated a ton of dive gear. I've got enough scuba gear to outfit 3 guys. I don't even scuba dive anymore.
I quite like getting him for a scuba dive, but I don't have time. Like you sort of said before, like, you get obsessed with spearfishing, it kind of takes over. But the other part of it is, like, life's busy, and you get older, you have kids, you don't have time for more than one sort of pursuit.
Yeah.
So I can see why it would sit there. What kind of stuff have you learned, or what have you changed your mind about with spearfishing gear over the years?
I think just really streamlining your gear as best as possible, and then knowing it well. So, tinkering with your gear, knowing how to take things apart, knowing if you're going to take your weight belt off, that if you're going to have your stringer attached, you got to take that off too, because it can get tangled and caught up. One thing I do with my stringers, I attach it with a zip tie to a D loop instead of directly to the loop. Because if something grabs my stringer or it gets caught on something in an instance and I need to break it free, then I can. If I've got stiff Dyneema 1.9 mil tied directly to me.
So what do you tie it with? A zip tie?
So I just put a zip tie around a D ring that's on my belt, and then I attach the stringer to the zip tie, and it comes around the back. And I just shove it in one of the holes in my weight belt. I use a Mercise belt, the Neptonics belt. I think it's awesome. It's super stretchy.
I love the Neptonics gear. I haven't seen something that they make or sell that I don't like. Like, I don't personally use a lot of it, but I haven't seen anything or heard of anyone going, "Oh, no, that's no good." It's probably just because the only reason I think you complain about any of it is if you're trying to use it in the wrong application. But,
I mean, their gear works. I use it, and who else?
And they sponsor the podcast too now, so I have to give them a plug.
That's right. There you go.
Yeah.
But you walk in my garage on the left-hand side, I've got black racks, 8 feet tall. I've got all my GoPro stuff, multiple wetsuits. I've got a dozen flashlights and everything you can think of. And that's the one thing is like, if you upgrade gear, you don't get rid of the old stuff. It's, becomes the backup, the spares, or I'll bring 5 lights on the boat because I can't tell you how many times, like, okay, one breaks, I lost one. I don't feel like changing batteries on another. I ask Aiden. I bring enough gear every time we go for 3 divers just in case.
Wow. Lucky it's an 18-foot boat and there's probably only 2 or 3 on it.
So much room.
What I was going to ask was, like, are you, like, you're wearing a stringer around your belt, so you're stringing your fish on you?
Yep.
It's kind of like, you guys can kind of get away with it, can't you?
Well, the thing is, I've tried putting them on the float. I've anchored a float and swim back to it and put fish on it and then swim over where you're hunting. I've tried to drag them on the surface. It's probably not the smartest thing to attach fish to yourself, but
I think the not smart thing is when people like use techniques like that you're using in your part of the world, like wearing a stringer of fish on your waist. If you come and do that out here off Brisbane, like, I'm sorry, you're going to get eaten. Like, it's game over. So, like, I guess, like knowing when to use some of those sorts of tricks is probably a smart thing. Do you get them tangled like in kelp and stuff? Is it when you put them on a float line and stuff like that?
Yeah, they get really tangled in kelp. If you have anything on the surface, really, it'll get tangled up quick. It's funny. Anybody listening is going to be like, "Wow, this guy's telling us to wear a tourniquet and strap fish to our body."
You're just like a regular commando. You've just got shit strapped everywhere. Torches.
No, but, they're streamlined, hanging off the back, and for shore dives, that's what we do. From the boat, though, we'll swim back to the boat and throw them in the chest, and then go back out. But we can anchor up, in the area we want to hunt. More often than not, shore diving, you're swimming long distances to get to where you want to go. So,
what about funny stuff? You and Aiden, you had the snap fin lost spear gun moment, but apart from Aiden burleying for a sheephead, what other funny stuff you guys get up to?
We had a funny moment. We ran the boat about 280 miles in 3 days. And we were on the last day, and we're about 25 miles offshore, and it just makes one of the high-pitched whistles and dies because it overheated. And we're running the kicker and going like, half a mile an hour, and we're thinking like, is this really how we're going to get back to shore? And it went on for like 2 hours, and we're like, this might be how we're getting back.
Oh wow.
And after a while, you just have to go, you just have to laugh about it. I mean, obviously I had the radios and the GPS and all these things. I got one of those Garmin's. I can send an SOS to the Coast Guard. But no, just those moments where it's like an oh shit moment, but it then becomes really comical to think.
Well, at least
we're such dumbasses.
At least you're in it with your mates.
Yeah,
It'd be worse if you're by yourself. All right, man. So we chatted a fair bit about your dive bag. Was anything else with equipment that we missed that you wanted to touch on?
No, I'll just a couple shameless plugs. Red Triangle Spearfishing in Petaluma, California. They've got all the gear. Uncle learn you how. If you want to get a Manny sub roller head and some excellent rubber and that stiff Dyneema, he's your man. And then if you're looking for, I would argue the best teak spear guns made in California, Captain Bly out of San Diego. I've got 2 of his. I use a 36-inch mid handle in Central California, and the thing is just a battle axe. Gets it done every time.
I've heard good things about the Captain Bly. You're also a bit of a Rob Allen pipe man as well, so it's funny.
Oh, I love the Rob Allen, man. They're just, they're like they're built like a diesel, and they operate like a sports car. That's what I like to say about the Rob Allen. They're so reliable. They shoot straight every single time. I've banged this shit out of them on the rocks. You can throw it up on the shore. It doesn't matter. Those things work every time.
I'm getting a big, an American-style timber spear gun. I'm really looking forward to it arriving and getting in and giving it a test because, a lot of the spear guns over here are pipe guns, and there's very much a culture of it. But when I have used wood in the past, I've really appreciated it. Like, the platform is just beautiful. Like, you do have to make some adjustments, like tracking and so on, but I think sometimes the trade-offs are worth it. It just depends on what you like. You know, it's very subjective, isn't it?
You know those young blood guys, young blood spearfishing?
Yeah.
The brother, Jocko, it looks like he makes a pretty clean wood gun.
Yeah, righto.
But
I'll check him out.
The thing with that I like about the wood is the ballast. I mean,
it's more precise.
The gun doesn't even feel like it's in my hand. But out of the water, it weighs 20 pounds. You know, it's just perfectly weighted. And it shoots so straight and accurate. There's no recoil. You know, you get that effect of a roller with no recoil with a big timber gun because it just has all that. It's like a shooting platform, basically. Sometimes I position it like I'm shooting a damn harpoon, like a small harpoon over, you know, a spear gun, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I love it. I love standing and I love being in the shit and then cleaning it and reteaking it and all of that stuff.
Yeah, righto. I you know, you probably heard me earlier. Like I used to say, I'm not a gear guy. I'm getting better as I age. A, because I'm also tight, but B, because like you just feel like a dick when, you know, something breaks on your gear and you're out and you don't know how to fix it. You know, and the problem with not doing it all and setting it up from the start is that, you know, you're relying on a store. You take it in, you guys in the store do everything for you. It's like when you're out, you know, on a multi-day charter, there's no one to hold your hand. Like if your gear breaks, like you really need to know how to fix it. Even if you just start with the little things, you know, like that's what I'm kind of doing. But
well, it's also too. It's like if you owned a gun, like a handgun, you would understand the mechanics. You would clean it. But then I see people with a spear gun that are just like they don't do any of that. Like, well, it's a tool. A gun you shoot at the range, this thing you're taking and your wife's going to make fun of you if you don't bring home dinner. So you need it to work. No, I'm all about, you know, knowing how it works, checking all your gear the night before, making sure there's no kinks in your armor. Otherwise, you know, you can get destroyed pretty quick.
Yeah, awesome. Hey man, let's hook into the last section of the show, Spearo Q&A, the faster round of questions. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, what current challenges are you facing in your spearfishing and how are you approaching them?
Well, the current challenges in my spearfishing are all the other elements going on in my life with trees falling on the house and dogs breaking legs and everything else is really impacting my time. But I think for me, I really want to increase my bottom time. I do want to take a course. I want to learn more about the anatomy and biology of free diving and you know, how I can really kind of strengthen and hone on those weaknesses.
What are you training for?
Oh, just, I mean, for me, I want to get into some bigger game species, get down to Southern California. You know, up here, we don't have any yellowtail or there's sea bass, but they're few and far between. You know, just really get after that. And eventually I want to get out with Bly on lineage charters and try to go shoot these elusive bluefin that everybody keeps bringing in. I mean, and like those, what is it? The guys out of Melbourne, is it Southern Coast Spearfishing? Yeah. Those guys.
Southern Spearfishing. Yeah.
Southern Spearfishing. Yeah. You know, it's like these parts of the world where these bluefin are coming in. We even had them here in California, Monterey Bay. People were catching, you know, 100, 140 pound bluefin. So I'm just probably going to get after something bigger.
It sounds like, you know, like here, it's very much been a success story of fisheries management. Is it the same there?
You know, I'm not an expert on it. I think in the 80s, they had a big boom of bluefin, maybe 10, 12 years ago. And then the last 3, 4, 5 years have been really good. I don't know if it's a fisheries management thing. To me, and what I've gathered, it seems that, you know, large schools that normally would be around Japan and other parts have come around the ocean gyre and are really just honing in on the California coast.
Okay.
Again, it could be, you know, ocean conditions changing their patterns or things. I'm not quite sure, but it's not typical to have, from my understanding, that many bluefin down there, and especially here in Central California as well.
All right, 2 questions. If someone that is just starting comes up to you, you've got 30 seconds to give them advice. What is the advice you give them?
Be comfortable, be smart, watch your buddy's back. That's it.
Nice. That's 10 seconds. I like it. That's even better. You guys are efficient in the Marines, not like the Army.
Hey,
eh?
we're
Good
very
stuff.
efficient. Everything's an acronym, and it has to take half the time it should.
Last question's a philosophical one. Some people really enjoy it, some people don't. Could you describe what the spearfishing experience means to you in one sentence?
Sustainable ocean living.
Boom. Eric, where can people come and find you? Where can people come and...
They can find me at on Instagram at Eric Janderson. And that's pretty much it. I deleted Facebook a while ago.
Yeah.
Couldn't do it. I was over it.
Yeah, I can understand it completely, man. I recently deleted Twitter. That will never happen again. Noob Sparrow are now on TikTok, but I don't have much to do with it other than supplying some content. And I completely understand it, man. So Eric J. Anderson on Instagram. You've got a cool thing going on there, man. Like, you have some good conversations. You share some cool posts, and you're very much... You know, like you sort of said, like, you're into the lifestyle of spearfishing, and that comes through loud and clear on your socials and in the conversations I have with you all the time. I'm looking forward to coming over and hanging out with you.
Yeah, when you get this way, we'll get you out in some dirty water and shoot some fish.
And get Aiden to lay down a shit, and I'll shoot something.
We'll get Aiden to lay some burley out.
Awesome, Eric. Catch you, man. As you can tell, I've got a fair bit of a man crush on Eric. I really, really enjoyed chatting with him and learning about Central Cali diving. I really want to get over and hang out with him at some stage in the future. I'm going to try and make that happen. Follow Eric Anderson on Instagram. If you want to find out about any of the links, like including the research about Urchin Barrens mentioned up in today's show notes, just head along to noobsparrow.com/Eric, ERIC, and it'll all be there for you to take a look at, along with some photos of some fantastic diving there in Central Cali. In 1 week, we are back for possibly Noob Sparrow's most controversial episode ever. It is the death pile phenomena. It's more of a discussion type piece where we go backwards and forwards discussing the pros and cons of some of the photos where, you know, you might see 100 fish laid out on the ground with 2 people standing there. The dock of death type photos, they call them in America. I get a whole ton of interviews done. It's a really big episode, really controversial. I'm hoping you'll tune in and join me for Death Pile Phenomenon. If you love the show, I'd love it if you support it on an episode by episode basis at patreon.com/Noob Sparrow. But that's it for me today. Massive thanks again to Eric. Over and out. See you next week for Death Pile Phenomena. Peace. Interesting message today. If you are a budget conscious Spearo, head to spearfishing.com.au, go to the clearance tab. There's a whole bunch of magic deals and bargains in there. Use the code NOOBSPARROW to save a further $20 on every purchase over $200. That's right, spearfishing.com.au, clearance tab. You'll thank me later.
All right, Shrek, per your request, here is the dumbest way to lose a brand new spear gun without shooting a single fish. 5 months ago today, I landed in Fiji to follow my dream of shooting massive dogtooth tuna and wahoo and sailing the South Pacific from hearing stories from my dad from long ago. It's been the past 3 months of getting the sailboat ready, fixing the dinghies, and being cooped up in a marina with stifling heats of over 40 degrees in engine rooms. We finally got the outboard and the dinghy ready, so we've started to do small trips out to the shallow reefs that are less than 10 meters, and the viz is less than a meter because of the construction and the constant downpour of rain. We can't get out to the outer reefs because our dinghy's not powerful enough. So I soon realized that my 140 centimeter gun is not adequate for these conditions. So we chip in and buy a affordable Rob Allen 80 centimeter and 50 centimeter for my friend Sia, who's a local who's taken interest in spearfishing. He's 15 years old and kind of discovering his first passion other than video games in diving, which I'm super excited about. So 2 weeks in, we're diving, and maybe about 3 feet visibility, and the biggest trevally I've ever seen swims in on me. And of course, he's just looking at my 80 centimeter and thinking, that's a toothpick. So next day we come back, and I decide to bring my big gun out, trying to call him in for about an hour and a half. Nothing happens. No fish, can't see anything, super bad visibility. So we toss the gear back in the boat, and I'm being lazy. And I just toss my gun in. It's still loaded, safety's on, and we start going back to the marina. We get to the entrance of the marina where it's about 15 meters, and I ask Sia just to unload my gun in the water. He tips it over the side, holds it, and shoots it, and then turns back to me and says, "It's gone." I say to him, "What do you mean it's gone?" He was like, it's gone. So I jump over the side of the boat. Both my contacts blow out of my eyes. I see it dropping down, and then I hear another splash, and it's Sia diving in with me. And all I see is the dinghy going in slow reverse, so I have to make a call. I come up, and I swim after the dinghy. Sia pops up, and just like that, a brand new wood gun disappeared with never having shot a fish. I think this is just a lesson to be extra cautious with what you think is okay or what you've done 1,000 times, and yeah, it's a lesson.